from Kate Nichol, Gary Middleton, and our other two colleagues should be here but may be late. Declarations of interest, members, anyone at this stage?
I suppose I should declare about student loan, because no doubt that'll come. Hopefully nearly there on that one, but...
Okay, chairperson's business. Members will have seen the reports in respect of appointment of a new Chief Executive of Tourism Northern Ireland, coming all the way from Lagan Valley to take this over. So are members content that we write to the outgoing Chief Executive thanking him for his service and a speedy recovery, and also a letter to the new Chief Executive congratulating her on her appointment? Okay.
Great.
Draft minutes, members, are at page 7. Are members content they're a true and accurate reflection of our deliberations on the 4th of June?
Agreed.
Great, thank you. Item 6 then, members, will be our first evidence session from Queen's University, and the committee will receive evidence from the university. I refer members to the clerk covering note and evidence that has been submitted, and I invite forward our colleagues if that is okay. So we have Professor Sir Ian Greer, who is President and Vice-Chancellor of the University, Professor Margaret Pro Vice-Chancellor for Global Engagement, Dr Ryan Feeney, Vice President for Governance and External Affairs and also the University's Registrar, and Kieran, Minto, who is President of the Students' Union. Colleagues, firstly, thank you for hosting the committee here today. The committee recognises the vital role that this institution plays in the economy and the life of Northern Ireland and across these islands, so we're delighted to be here, and I'm very happy to hand over to you at this stage.
Well, thank you, Chair, and welcome to all the committee to Queen's University. It's a great pleasure to have you with us today. And we do hope this meeting, and indeed the visit to CITB going on later, will demonstrate to you the importance of having a sustainable higher education sector here in Northern Ireland. Indeed, we want a sector that flourishes, a sector that delivers not just for the economy but for our society, and perhaps most importantly for our young people. Now today, as you said, Chair, I'm joined by Professor Margaret Topping, Vice-Chancellor for Global Engagement, Dr Ryan Feeney, Vice President Governance and External Affairs at the University Registrar, and also by Kieran Minto. And Kieran is the President of the Students' Union. He finishes in 4 weeks' time, but he's had an absolutely fantastic year with lots of really good success. And I would like the committee to join me in congratulating Kieran on, and indeed the whole Students' Union, on the recent success in the 2025 What University Student Choice Awards, when they were number one in the UK. Being first in the UK is a tremendous achievement, and I think it's testament to the commitment and the work that the SU leadership team have done under Kieran's direction. So congratulations, Kieran.
Congratulations, Kieran. When I was at this institution, I ran for election to the Student Council and got 3 votes. So congratulations. You've been much more successful with your electorate here at the university than I ever was.
So I should probably give the committee a little bit of background on Queen's. We've got 25,000 students, 4,300 staff, and over 206,000 alumni across 137 countries. We're regarded as one of the UK and Ireland's leading universities. We're ranked in the top 10% in the world, and we've leveraged that position to drive truly inclusive economic growth throughout the region. Our economic impact is substantial. We deliver £3.35 billion of economic impact every year. That's a 45% increase over the last 6 or 7 years. And the benefit to cost ratio we have is over 8 to 1. That's actually the highest in the Russell Group part of the higher education sector. So for every pound that you invest in Queen's University, we generate 8 for the economy. So I think that underscores the importance of Queen's to our economy and indeed our place. So how have we delivered that impact? Well, since I started back in 2018 in this role, the university income has grown by almost £150 million per year, and we've created more than 800 additional jobs. We've grown our research. It's now consistently above £100 million of research income every year. We have more large awards, for example, a £55 million award into the Futures Medicines Institute, and we've got £60 million worth of awards into co-centres in areas such as climate and food. We've had fantastic success in research quality. We're ranked number 1 in the UK for agriculture and food, and number 4 for biomedical sciences, and number 8 for law. These are no mean achievements. We're also ranked 2nd in the UK for entrepreneurial impact, which is how we take our goods, our research and translate it into new products, goods and services. And we're in the top 10 universities for the number of UK spin-outs. So our impact on the Northern Ireland economy is really substantial. Importantly, we've been fully supportive of the Belfast Region City deal. We see that as a game changer for our economy. We are responsible for 3 of the major projects in the innovation pillar, and we've put in more than £40 million of university resource to pay for our contribution to these projects. We also carry the capital risk and the operational risk of all 3 of these projects. The capital risk is significant because of the inflationary effects on the construction industry, and we have to meet that because the component of funding that we receive from government is capped, and we know that we have to therefore find the shortfall. The fact that we can deliver these Belfast Region City Deal projects reflects the fact that we've been aligning our research, our teaching if you like, to what business, the economy, the society needs here in Northern Ireland. And that's evidenced by the fact that we're working in areas such as health, advanced manufacturing, cyber security and data and digital sciences. But it's not just economic impact, because we've just recently been awarded University of Sanctuary status in May of this year, and that reflects our efforts to facilitate access to higher education to local refugees, asylum seekers and migrant communities. We do a lot with communities. Perhaps our flagship initiative is the QCAP initiative, Queen's Community in Place. That's helped community partners to directly leverage over £17.4 million in funding, all of which is going directly into these communities. So the impact that we have is not simply here on campus, it's across the region. And indeed, just 2 weeks ago, Queen's launched with QCAP a £5.7 million Peace Plus funded project aimed at transforming the health challenges by supporting people living with substance abuse and alcohol abuse in Northern Ireland. Now, that's a lot we can achieve. That's a lot we have achieved. And we do all of that with no additional government funding for higher education. We do it all with capped student numbers, and we do it all with no increase in university fees. Indeed, one might argue that Northern Ireland is actively disinvesting in the biggest driver of the Northern Ireland economy, the HE sector, as we've seen a 40% reduction in real terms in our funding since 2011. Since 2021, the real terms reduction in the teaching grant has amounted to £17.5 million. That's been wholly absorbed by this university. So despite successive programme for government since 2011 identifying the theme of economic growth as a central priority, we've not really as a society, as an economy, put our money where our mouth is to try and make that happen. Now, the teaching cost for our home students exceeds the price that we can charge. The funding we get for research is less than the cost of delivering it because of the UK funding model. We therefore rely on international student fee income to cross-subsidise the teaching and education of Northern Ireland students and to cross-subsidise our research. Around 40% of our total fee income comes from international students. That amounts to around £60 million per year. And of course the sector, and this isn't a Northern Ireland issue, this is a UK-wide issue, in fact it's probably a West-wide issue, is the rapidly increasing cost base. And just recently, for example, we've seen a significant rise in national insurance, which for Queen's means we have to find an additional £4.6 million each year. So despite that international cost base, we've been doing quite well. But over the last year or two, we've seen a stark reduction in the number of international students choosing to come to the UK. And Belfast and Queen's are no exception. But that's created a problem for us, because as a leadership team, we've got a responsibility to deliver a balanced budget. You're all conscious of that. Our income and expenditure have to roughly align. Of course, there could be fluctuations from year to year, but we've got to have income that matches our expenditure. So we've had to look at how we can diversify our income. One mitigating action has been a decision to become the first university in the Russell Group to open a campus in the Gujarat International Finance Tech City, or GIFT City as it's known in India, with our first cohort of students starting in January. So that's going to be a shift in us moving into a market to attract students from India to our campus there, but to give us an additional and diversified income stream. Margaret's been leading in that programme, and she can talk to you about it in more detail if you wish. Now, alongside that increase in cost base, we've seen that financial risk from the uncertainty in international student numbers. Until these students arrive, we don't know if they're going to come. So we've got significant uncertainty. I've told you about the risk of the Belfast Region City deal in terms of operational and capital expenditure. And there's an additional risk because with only about 6 or 7 weeks to go before the start of our new financial year, we have absolutely no clarity on our block grant from the Department for the Economy. So we cannot set an institutional budget and we have projects that are under risk. So we're in a very challenging situation. So let's think, what is at risk? The first thing I'd like to highlight is our young people. Because over 5,000 young people leave Northern Ireland each and every year to study in Great Britain, to pursue their career there. Very few, less than a third, ever return. Our funding model in Northern Ireland does not provide local students with the opportunity to remain here, contribute to society and make a difference to the economy. For some, they're determined leavers, and of course we should support them going, but many are reluctant leavers. This is not a plea for Queen's. This is a plea for the sector because Queen's couldn't solve this on its own. This is important for the sector. This is important for Northern Ireland. So we're not capitalising, if you will, on our most precious advantage. Indeed, we're subventing Great Britain's demographic deficit with our own young people. We cover their healthcare, their social care, the education costs up to 18, and yet the benefits are harvested elsewhere. Our higher education system suppresses opportunity for increased productivity and the opportunity to transform economic growth. Further, it actually amplifies inequalities. Within the 12 regions of the UK, Northern Ireland comes second last for the number of higher education places per head. We're last by a significant margin for investment, and we're in the last third, as you all know, for productivity. Great Britain, indeed, has 42% more full-time undergraduate places per head than Northern Ireland. That is stark inequality of access to higher education. To close that gap with GB, we need to increase our full-time undergraduate places substantially, from around 35,000 to 50,000 in total. With our current position, we're simply supporting growth in the GB economy at the expense of our own. So the consequences of all this are quite clear. Prospective investors and local employers who laud the quality of our students lament the scarcity of provision. To break this cycle, we've got to change our thinking, we've got to change our approach, we've got to change our policy. We need to think how we can invest in education and not see it as a cost, invest in universities and see them as ways in which we can drive the economy forward. Indeed, if you look across the world, at any cluster of innovation, you'll find a university at its heart. Stanford would be an obvious one. But here in Belfast, we're no exception. The universities drive forward our economy. We'd like to work together with government. We'd like to work in partnership because we believe that's the way forward. We think there is a triple helix of universities working with government, working with business, that by that interaction can create a triple helix, if you like, that will create that virtual cycle of success. So we want to grow the sector. That includes expansion of the UU Magee campus. We've absolutely no issue with that. We think it's important for the sector to grow. But we have to emphasise what we want to see is growth and not simply displacement. Displacing funding, students, staff, initiatives from Belfast to Derry won't solve the problem, but true growth will certainly help. So we certainly support growth of the sector, whether that's in Derry or in Belfast. We'd be fully behind that. We also support the principle of a review of higher education funding. We think that's long overdue. But we know that it's not going to have much impact unless it's truly independent and includes tuition fees within its scope. Everything's got to be on the table. So we don't think that they'll work unless there's a strong commitment, not just to the quality of the report, but also to a commitment to the findings being implemented that the report identifies. We also should, in the course of that, think about how we position the Republic of Ireland students whose classification at present is as a home student. So when we receive students from south of the border and we get around 4,000 applications a year at present, and we accept that student, it means there's one less place for a student from Northern Ireland. Now, we want to welcome these students. This is an inclusive university, but we want to welcome students from Northern Ireland too, and we believe it would be important to take the ROI students out of that number cap and let them come to the university freely if they wish, but not at the expense of places for Northern Ireland students. Finally, although it's not technically in your remit, you'll be conscious of some of the recent changes in UK-wide policy, and in particular I'm thinking about the immigration white paper. The changes in visas set out there is likely to have a negative impact on recruitment of international students to the UK. We think we've got to redouble our efforts to be an attractive place. It's unlikely we can change the visa issue, but there is one other aspect in that white paper which they flagged, and that was a 6% levy on international students to help fund other aspects of the UK economy. Technically, that doesn't apply to Northern Ireland. That's a decision for Northern Ireland, but we believe that would be very damaging to our universities and the economy, and so we'd urge you to use your pressure, use your authority to oppose such a move, given the obvious and severe consequences for the sector. And this morning I was listening to the press releases percolating through about the spending review that will be announced later. As part of that spending review, there's going to be an 86 billion pledge to increase science and technology spending. That's very welcome, and we'd really like Northern Ireland to benefit from that. So we would like your support in making sure that Northern Ireland companies, Northern Ireland universities, Northern Ireland people benefit from that investment as we drive economic growth. So thank you all for coming today. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this opening statements. We're all very keen to answer your questions and have a discussion with you and to develop a position where we work in partnership to address the needs of Northern Ireland. Thank you, Chair.
Very much indeed, Vice-Chancellor, for that. And can I thank you and your team for your continued dedication to Northern Ireland. Just so I'm clear and the committee is clear, did I pick you up correctly, Vice-Chancellor, in saying that the university is still not aware of its budget set by the Department for the Economy?
That's correct, Chair. About 2 months ago, we were informed by the Department that we may face a significant cut, which might be as high as 10.5 million, to take effect from the 1st of August. That clearly was a major concern to us, because at short notice it's very difficult to make changes that will allow us to make these savings or to find the income elsewhere. We've had ongoing correspondence and discussion with the Department to try and reduce that, obviously, but as yet we've got no clear position what our budget or what our allocation will be for August, and therefore it's difficult for us as a university to set a budget.
And have you given any, as a committee have been struggling to try and get that information as well, have you been given any insight as to when the final budget settlement will be allocated to you?
We've had nothing definite. We're told it will be soon, but nothing definite.
And I just think that as a committee, it's something that we should, seriously need to be pressing on, because although the academic financial year runs from August, these decisions need to be made now and made quickly. In spite of the department, this university has continued to invest, particularly in widening participation, Vice-Chancellor, and can I thank you and the institution particularly for your work in my constituency on the Shankill Road and your support for our city, a cross-community group who would never walk through the doors of a university and this institution rather than them having to do their graduation in the Republic of Ireland, do it here. For some people and their families, it's the first time they've ever stepped into a higher education setting, and it gives them the inspiration to want to come here, and you've put your money where your mouth is in terms of financially supporting them, so can I thank you for that. Could you maybe just talk about the work that you do right across Belfast and the wider region about widening participation?
Oh, absolutely. It's something I'm quite passionate about, Chair. We want Queen's to be accessible to anyone with the ability to come here and succeed. Our flagship programme is our Pathway programme. That identifies students in the last year of post-primary school, people who've got the ability but might not have the support to do well. We allow them access to Queen's to see what it's all about, to make sure that they feel they can walk through the doors. We then discount their grades for entry by 2, so if the requirement for a course was 2 A's and a B, they would get in with 3 B's. And we raise money philanthropically to give them a bursary of £1,000 every year, pardon me, while they're here. Interestingly, the outcome for these students is actually better than the middle class cohort. They've got a higher rate of first class honours and 2-1s than others. So they've got incredible hunger, if you will, for success. They do very well, and we'd like to support that. We started that programme 7 or 8 years ago now with about a dozen students. There's now more than 350, I think, going through that programme. So that's one example, but overall I think it's around 32% of our students who are home students based in Northern Ireland come from the most disadvantaged backgrounds.
Brilliant, thank you. And then just in relation to the higher education review, the department usually publishes end-of-year progress reports and gives themselves green ratings. So when you mark your own homework, you tend to give yourself a good mark. But have you had any engagement in relation to the review? Because from my reading of this, Vice-Chancellor, the panel to do this report still hasn't even been set up.
No, we've had no direct input into the development of the report.
Okay, no problem at all.
Just to say, Chair,
yes.
sorry, just with no direct input, but officials have consulted with
Yes.
us on their thinking around the report, and as the Vice-Chancellor said, we've repeatedly indicated we want an independent panel.
Yes, and I suppose, you know, there's no point doing a review if it's just going to re-slice the cake. If the cake's not going to get any bigger, all they're going to do is displace students and finance from Belfast to other parts. In terms of the pressure that the students from the Republic of Ireland, in terms of the Mazen cap, what are the numbers in terms of actual students from the Republic of Ireland that are at the institution, and how has that grown over recent years?
Yeah, it's grown significantly, but this is Margaret's area, so I'll pass over to Margaret
Sure,
who can give you the figures.
I don't have the exact figures. Ram, do you have those?
Yeah, we have 1,000 students at the moment who are in the university from ROI.
Yes.
There's been a significant increase over the last number of years. Our attrition rates, Chair, are usually if you get 6,000 applications, you get 600 students.
Yes.
Our applications this year are up again, so we have record numbers. I think our applications at the moment, Alistair's in the back there, but they're sitting around 8,000.
Okay.
So we have seen a substantial increase in people moving from Republic of Ireland to Belfast. The reality is we have no methodology or evidence behind it, but anecdotally it's due to the cost of living in Dublin.
Yes.
We offer a very good proposition around accommodation, and we offer a good wraparound. Belfast is a good city to live in terms of cost of living. But as the Vice-Chancellor indicated, unfortunately we want to welcome these students, but there is a displacement issue around local students.
And what is the rationale for the department including them within the Northern Ireland numbers?
It's not clear to us.
Fair
Clearly there's a reciprocal arrangement because our students can go south,
Yes.
but the numbers are not in equilibrium.
Sure.
The numbers coming north are much greater than those going south.
So just to support that, Chair, there's about 11% of the school-leaving population in the south, give or take, going north. It's less than around 0.5% going north to south.
Okay. I'm going to open up to colleagues and may come back in later. Sinead?
Well, thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for all of the work that you do in relation to driving the economy, and in many ways the engine of our economy, and to hit all of the targets that we need to hit. We need our higher education institutions to be successful. And obviously you've talked quite a bit about the pressures and the sustainability and the stability of the universities based on the current financial model. And we too are concerned about it, and we would like to see that review of higher education funding as soon as possible. Now, I can't say with any certainty or give you any kind of comfort, because I asked the question yesterday from the Minister regarding her plans for the future for university, and really basically she referred to the review and currently looking at the terms of reference, and had no clear indication of what the timing would be for that. But I also asked in the interim, had she any plans to increase budgets or spending for the university, and again there was nothing came forward. How critical is it to get extra funding from the department? Because as you outlined, you're getting something like you said a 3.5% growth since 2011 in the funding. I mean, that's a reduction really in terms, and what alternative? Obviously, you know, as a party, the SDLP, we are not for pushing down on increasing student fees, because we believe that the department needs to actually step up and support our institutions. So what's the alternatives in this current like financial pressures?
So there are very few alternatives. You're absolutely right. We've been effectively disinvesting in an economic driver, which is the university. We've been struggling to make ends meet with the allocation that we get. there aren't many businesses who would sell a product cheaper than the cost. So we're creating a deficit with ourselves. So that's why we have to look at how we diversify our income streams, whether that's international students, overseas campuses. We've got to do more to bring money in to cross-subsidise. We don't have an issue with that cross-subsidy model. It's widespread across the UK. But that cross-subsidy model is stressed. Indeed, in some places it's distressed by the loss of international students. So if you've got 3 legs in a stool and 2 of them are already short, and we shorten the third one, everything's going to drop down, and that's our worry. So if we can't increase the block grant and we can't increase the number of students, the only option we've got is to ask for an increase in the fees, which is why you'll be aware that the leaders of all the higher education institutions in Northern Ireland wrote to the Minister a few weeks ago, suggesting that we might be able to increase the fees. We were very reluctant to do that, but we felt we had no option. And we only did it on the basis that we'd also increase student support, because it's really critical to us that we must not disadvantage further people who are already disadvantaged in our society. We want to continue to welcome over 30% of people in that category to Queen's going forward. That mustn't be disturbed. So we can only increase fees if we also increase support for the students. In an ideal world, of course, we would have a higher block grant. We wouldn't have to do that, but we're conscious that we're not in that ideal world. Given that this really affects our students, I'd like to ask Kieran if he wants to contribute.
Yeah, 100%. In terms of what you were saying at the start, I think it's important to remember that the university is expected, and us as a union are expected to provide more and more services than maybe we would have traditionally. I mean, you might have seen on your way in, you've walked past a food bank. We dress it up, we call it a pantry, but it is a food bank. I walk past that every day on my way into work, and the fact that we have a system where students who are trying to better themselves, or trying to become our next generation of doctors and engineers and so on, are having to go to a food bank, so they don't pass out during exams. I mean, that's not the sort of system that I think we should have, in Northern Ireland. We are providing mental health support, we're providing well-being support, filling in for gaps with our healthcare system. We're providing, accommodation. We're providing everything, a wraparound experience for our students, but not given the extra funding to do that. So we're expected to provide far more than a university traditionally would have, aside from education and research, but not given the funding to cover that. In terms of the whole tuition fee angle and so on, I fully understand the position that the university is in terms of its finances. And I understand that they're very much backed into a corner. Our opinion as a union would be that the tuition fees are not a long-term solution. It's a short-term solution. It's a cash injection that can allow the university to sort of cover its expenses. But long-term, it doesn't work. We look across the water at England, and we see universities that were handed, massive amounts of money through tuition fees, that are firing staff, that are struggling to provide the same services we are. England has the highest fees across all of Europe. Are they able to provide a better quality education than Queen's? No, not at all. So for me, the way I look at it is that would provide the university a cash injection, but the amount of money that we're talking about when it comes to government budgets is not massive. That would have given the university below 10 million, as I understand it, in terms of extra funding. I think that there's other angles we can look at if we actually drill down into how we fund higher education, try to base some of the decisions we're making on models that are working across Europe for other economies of roughly our size, other small economies, and look at how they fund their higher education and look at the support that they put in. As the Vice-Chancellor was saying earlier, the university is really your bedrock for your economy. You cannot create a high-skill, high-value economy without a university providing those workers. Every business leader we speak to through our enterprise department is saying that they want Queen's graduates, they want the skills that we can provide, but that we can't get students through the door fast enough. So that's, for me, is the basis. And when it comes down to it, it's a choice about allocation of money. I see the university as a good spend of money that generates revenue long term. Not something that's a money hole or a money sink.
I suppose I mean, I appreciate where the institutions are coming from in relation to finding solutions to their current financial situation, but I think to push down on students is not the place to go, because it's not going to be sustainable and it's not going to future-proof our institutions, and we value them highly. But just on student poverty, have you got data in relation to the level of student poverty that Queen's is experiencing?
I don't have exact numbers, but what I can tell you is that the vast majority of students work far more than the recommended 20 hours. The university puts forward recommendations that students have a clear delineation of time between part-time work and their studies. We know that large numbers of students are working essentially full-time while studying full-time on paper. I don't know any student that doesn't work at least 1 or 2 jobs and then are also attending a food bank. The student poverty rate, I think, is something that sometimes gets washed over or sort of ignored. Sometimes it's seen as your time at university. I didn't have much money, going through university. Yes, but I think the rates today are a little bit different. It's not that students don't have the money to go out partying. It's that they don't have the money to pay their bills or to heat their homes in the winter. So those student poverty rates are higher than I think people think. We hand out 10,000 free meals. We handed out 10,000 free meals last year. We get hundreds of students through our pantry every week, thousands through tens of thousands through every year. Looking for food, looking for very simple, basic products, hygiene products, things like that. So I don't have exact numbers, but I think it speaks for itself. Yeah.
Okay. Professor Ian, you mentioned the city deals and the prospect of, the risk. You mentioned the risk of city deals and the investment that the universities are going to make on the city deals. Can you talk more about that risk in relation to investment?
Certainly. So the city deal projects have taken longer than we would have liked to develop. They've been ongoing since early 2018 and they're only now just coming to fruition. Over that period, as you'll appreciate, there's been significant increases in inflation, and that's been a challenge because the funding allocations came through some years ago. We were perfectly content with them, but with inflation we've got to pick up that difference. So as we're building the 3 centres, and one is almost complete, the Advanced Manufacturing Innovation Centre at Global Point is looking pretty good. It'll have a topping out ceremony fairly soon. The health-related project iReach is over on the hospital site, a few hundred yards away. That's in the demolition phase, taking down the property that we've acquired to do the development on the land. And the third project is Minto 1.0, which is linked in computer science. You'll probably hear more about it when you visit ESIT. We've not started that one yet, and of course that's a concern to us when we're not conscious of what our budget's going to be in August. We therefore have to be careful about what commitments we undertake. Until we get that budget clarity, it's quite hard to know precisely what we can do and when we can spend the money. So we're absolutely committed to the City Deal projects. We think they're going to transform Northern Ireland. Yeah. But we're obviously at a difficult time from a university perspective with regards to the funding that we've got, because there are so many projects that we want to do. We don't want to stop anything. We certainly don't want to have a negative impact on our student experience, on our research or our community impact. But we are conscious that without knowing what our budget is, we're left in a bit of a no man's land as to what we can sign off and progress with. And I'm sure you'll all be conscious of that with your own responsibilities.
Professor Ian, what percentage of the Greater Belfast City Deal is Queen's actually receiving?
On the overall deal is worth of the order of £1 billion. The innovation part of it, which concerns Queen's, makes up probably about a fifth of that, so over 200 million, probably around 225 million of that funding would come to Queen's for these 3 major innovation projects. And within that we've put in, I think, £43 million of our own resources split across those 3 projects.
Okay. So it's a significant investment from the city deals that you're receiving, and you're making a significant contribution as well as an organisation.
Absolutely, it's a great investment. It will deliver lots of jobs, lots of capacity, lots of capability for NI. So we think it's transformative and absolutely the right way to go. But we're conscious that there's significant pressures on cost. We also carry the operational risk. So each of these centres, they're not university centres. They're university-operated centres that pull in industry. So let me give you an example. Our economy, as you know, is largely small and medium-sized entities. Often they get to the stage where they can't develop their products or their services further because they don't have the R&D capacity or potential. So they can use our facilities, these City Deal facilities, to come in, access top-class equipment, staffed by top-class people from the university, to develop their new product or their new services, take it back out and put it into the marketplace so they can grow the economy. So these are industry-facing centres rather than university centres. We operate them, we will make sure that they're successful, but they'll only be successful if you work in partnership with industry. So it should absolutely help our economy grow.
Okay, thank you. Can I just ask you another question and another angle about MASN? You talked extensively about the need to increase MASN places in order to help support the universities and make them more sustainable. You mentioned the figure 35,000 to 50,000, and also I appreciate in your remarks as well about supporting the expansion of the McGee campus, Exeter University in Derry. None of us wants to see, we want growth in our university numbers, but it's really important that all institutions support the growth of the McGee campus as well, because as you outlined, the economic impact that a university has for not just the city that it's placed in, but it's the wider objectives of the economy as well. So in relation to those discussions, have you spoken to the Minister about the raising of MASN, and what other directions? I know we've talked about the ROI students and if that could be taken out of the MASN numbers, but what other conversations are you having with the department in relation to that?
So for 7 years I've been talking about getting the MASN issue addressed, and I've been unsuccessful, I have to say. I understand the problem because it's linked to funding, but it does create terrible inequality for our young people. The figure I gave you of moving from 35,000 places to 50,000 places is to put us on a par with England in terms of the number of higher education places per head of population. We've got a terrible problem with inequality here. Our young people cannot access higher education locally, so even if they want to stay, we send many of them away, and that actually costs our economy more, not just in the loss of them never coming back to work in the economy, but also because the cost to Northern Ireland of them having their education in England is actually higher than them staying here. So economically, it doesn't add up. Now, in other small nations, Scotland's a good example, they lose around 5% of their young people, but they've a substantial increase coming from Northern Ireland, coming from England. So they end up in a positive position. I think it's about net plus 18%, whereas we end in a position of minus 28% net. So we're not attracting people in from GB. We are increasing. We're working hard to do that, because if we're losing a lot of people, we should be attracting people in. But just now, the main group of people coming in are the international students, and that's why we're particularly worried about their loss, because they don't just help the university, they actually help our economy. International students are a fantastic economic driver. They deliver fantastic economic impact. Many of them stay on and work for a year or two in areas where there are skills shortages. And of course, they also go back home and spread a very positive image of Northern Ireland, of Queen's University, and I'm sure of Ulster University too. So protecting that international cohort is really important to us, but also thinking about that inequality piece. I'm very concerned that we offer a different set of opportunities to young people in Northern Ireland than those who live in England receive. That can't be right. We've got to address that. And that's the scale of the increase we need, and the order of 15,000 places if we want to be on a par with England. Right?
Yeah, could I just support what the Vice-Chancellor saying? And Sinead, to give you a bit of a reassurance, 3 years ago, Sirian visited University of Ulster McGee and did a joint press event with Paul Bartholomew outlining our support for the expansion of McGee, and that remains this institution's position. In terms of trying to increase the sector, let me give you some statistics. So, as Sirian indicated, 5,000 people are now leaving Northern Ireland every year to seek higher education in GB. That'll go up to 10,000 by 2030. Statistics that the committee will have. So, if we put this in context, the 3 universities in Liverpool have 12,000 undergrads from Northern Ireland currently in their cohort. Yep. We've about 12,000 undergrads. You have the same. If we could take 6,000 of those, we will solve the problem in Derry, Londonderry. and that's something that we're committed to. Two other points I would make about Derry Londonderry. We have 180 students in Alton Galvin at the moment, medics that are currently on placement. We have a very strong research programme in place, a very sizeable research programme in place with Seagate, and we have about 2,500 students from the city of Derry here in Queen's. So we're committed to Derry and are completely supportive of UU's position on Derry, and have a very good relationship with Vice-Chancellor Bartholomew and his team, and will continue to support them in every way possible. However, we've made this very clear repeatedly to department officials. It can't be about displacement. It can't be about taking resources from one institution or any other part of the UU institution and put them into the city. It has to be about growth. So the solution to this problem is lifting Mazen, and we need to find a way of doing that, because as Serene has indicated, there is no way that 5,000 people want to leave this region every year. They're forced to leave. That's a very important statement. They're forced to leave by current Northern Ireland executive policy.
And a lot of people that can't afford to leave are the ones that are actually having to leave, because the bar has been set very high here for entry to our universities, and therefore sometimes those that can least afford it are actually having to leave and take on the higher tuition fees in other universities in England. So I've always supported the growth of Mazen. It has to be done in a strategic way as well. It's just not opening the doors of our institutions. We need to make sure that we address our economic needs and the needs of our students as well. And obviously I would like a lot of it to be ring-fenced for McGee campus. But however, I do think it is absolutely economic madness to cap your economic driver. So look, I'll probably have other
just
questions.
Just with the Vice-Chancellor permission, can I just come in quickly, Chair? So Vice-Chancellor Bartholomew uses a statistic which starkly outlines this position. If you get 3 Cs in England, you have a 50% chance of attending a local university. You get 3 Cs in Northern Ireland, you have a 5% chance.
Yeah.
So that's the unfortunate position we find ourselves in. As Vice-Chancellor Greer's outlined, young people from low-income families are the people most impacted, because pathway programmes that Serene, to his credit, has put in place allows them to get access to Queen's. But it's the kids from the lower quantiles that are being forced to go to GB. They're paying the higher fees, and they're the people that are ending up in higher poverty. So the entire model's broken. So the narrative out there that says that raising fees will in any way preclude people from accessing higher education, and we can agree to disagree on that. The Augur report in England shows that's not the case. But it's actually the dichotomy. It's people from low-income backgrounds that are not achieving the required grades that are being forced to go.
But can I, just want to come back one second about the tuition fees as well. Tuition fees will impact on poverty for students, and whenever students get to the point of 28, 29, 30s, their student fees are taken into context for them buying a house. My daughter's recently purchased a house, and it was all put in relation to the mortgage that she was allowed to take out. So it does have an impact, and we're not, I am not here to squeeze down on our students. We need to fix higher education. We have failed to do so, and we've disinvested in it for many, many, many years.
So maybe just one final point, Chair, without dominating this. Perhaps what we need to do is look at tuition fees in a different context. So Vice-Chancellor Greer and others have been asking for a while that we don't take a very prescriptive approach in this. What if we looked at a position where we have a means-tested approach, where people from low-income families get free access to higher education and those with more means pay more? I think we need to be revolutionary in terms of the approach that we're taking here, and not looking at the very sort of constrained approach that we take at the moment. Because we're with you, Sinead. We want young people from low-income families coming to Northern Ireland universities. Ian Greer has been on the record about that and has done more than most to make that happen. That's very clear, the proof's in the pudding. But the reality is that the current funded model is actually doing the opposite of what you want, and that's what we need to fix.
100%. And listen, this is political cardness from the Northern Ireland Executive over many, many years. And this conversation really annoys me, because students do not pay to go to university in Northern Ireland. It's a graduate tax. They will not pay it until then. And I get people's points by saying that it's taken into account for mortgages. But the other option is that they go to the university in other parts of the United Kingdom and pay triple. Yeah. So if politicians, me included, don't want university fees to be increased, tell me where you're taking the money from. You can't have your cake on this issue and eat it. Jonathan.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you very much for your presentation so far. It really does sound like a story of two halves as such. this fact file in itself shows the incredible impact that Queen's has had to the Northern Ireland economy. Statistics that stand in stark contrast to many other sectors, particularly that 3.35 billion annually. That in itself is something we all should be rightly proud of, and you as an institution should. And I suppose probably then I look at the other half, and we've talked about the difficulties for the sector, and I want to focus on the joint letter that was issued from the universities to all parties and indeed executive ministers. And there's the paragraph particularly in it that I just wanted to raise. So the current iteration of the funding model for higher education in Northern Ireland is not sustainable. Since diverging from the rest of the UK in 2011, tuition fees increases have consistently fallen below inflation, while costs have risen dramatically. This has resulted in a significant growing real-term funding gap as compared to the original intended model. Now, the university said that they offered a compromise as such, and much debate has been around, increasing tuition fees. Is that the right way to try to offset some of the challenges that the university has faced? So can I ask you, in your own analysis, is it your belief that by rising tuition fees in Northern Ireland, inflationary, I think it was something in the region of £1,000, do you believe that would have had a significant impact in participation in university courses by those particularly of a socially disadvantaged background in Northern Ireland?
The short answer is no. But first of all, I'd like to say that that letter was signed by the principals from St Mary's, Stranmillis, as well as Paul Bartholomew and myself. And I think that shows the level of concern that exists. And the fact, I think the phrase has been used, we were backed into a corner, if you like, because we can't change our numbers. English universities could deal with some of these stresses by increasing the numbers of students they would recruit. We couldn't do that. We sought an increase in the block grant. That clearly wasn't going to happen. Indeed, we were told we were going to have a cut. So the only option we were left with was fees. And what you're absolutely right, our concern was that it could impact negatively participation, which is why in that letter, I can't remember the precise phrasing, but you'll have it in front of you, that we also asked for a commensurate increase in student support if we were going to go down that path. None of the bodies would have countenanced an increase in fees without more student support for those who might be disadvantaged by this.
So the joint letter, and I do note that it was from all of the institutions, should that have come as a shock to those in receipt? Like, I would imagine there's quite a degree of consultation with political parties about the situation that you found yourself in, and also how the increase that was being suggested would, in a sense, offset concerns regarding access by an increase in the maintenance loan. What was that level of engagement? And then subsequent following the letter, what was the direct engagement with the Minister as to how they were going to address the very real concerns that you highlighted in your joint letter?
So first of all, I hope it wouldn't be a surprise to anyone, because I've been a broken record in this for the last 7 years, talking about MASN, talking about funding issues, because we believe, as you've heard already, there needs to be a fundamental review of higher education. Personally, I'd go further and I'd say tertiary education, because we've got some terrific further education colleges in Northern Ireland that are not fully utilised to their full potential. And I think we need a system that involves both the colleges and the universities working together to address the needs of our young people and address the needs of the economy. I'd like to see greater movement between them so that people could leave Queen's and go to an FE college and vice versa. Indeed, a lot of our students actually come from Belfast Met. I think they're one of our biggest providers of entrance. So it shouldn't be a surprise. We had, and I think that applies to all the HE bodies, I think we've all been having discussions about having a review of how the sector is funded. In terms of that, the letter per se, we did liaise with SPADs across the political parties, so this shouldn't have been a surprise, and Ryan can perhaps pick that up and tell you how we did communicate that, both in advance and following the letter.
So just to follow on, Jonathan, we made all the political parties aware that we were drafting the letter. We made all the political parties aware of what was in the letter. We shared the letter with some people who asked for it, and we discussed it. I don't think anything in the letter came as a shock. We briefed our trade unions. in advance. We briefed the Students' Union in advance, and Kieran and his team made it very clear they objected to the position, but understood the financial position we found ourselves in. So we made sure that there was all considerable stakeholder engagement before the letter was sent to the party leaders.
Okay. In relation to the 5,000 students that are leaving Northern Ireland, and in many cases, as you've outlined, some of the most disadvantaged are actually being pushed down a road where they have to pay an even higher tuition fee rather than trying to find a way that we could accommodate them here through a sustainable model. What percentage, has there been any work done in terms of those 5,000 students to suggest the percentage that are actually reluctant leavers? There will be some that will want to leave, and that's for understandable reasons, but has there been any work done on that particular point?
I'm not aware of any clear statistic on that.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. On the issue of the immigration white paper that you've mentioned, and this is where I suppose probably I would like maybe from Margaret, obviously, the interaction of the campus in India. Is it your belief that some of the visa challenges which you have outlined in terms of international students will be offset by the campus in India?
That would be our hope. I mean, certainly the challenges, it's been a very difficult and challenging situation in terms of international student recruitment to Belfast, and the immigration white paper is making an already challenging situation more difficult. We will continue to be trying to encourage as many students as possible to come to the campus here in Belfast, because, as the Vice-Chancellor has said, they diversify the campus, they diversify the city, they bring an incredible amount of cultural and economic and social richness to the region as well. They're also absolutely critical in filling that talent pipeline that our businesses here need. But in the context of, I mean, what we see is that the drivers are, and the future drivers are not that we will see an increase in more students coming here, and that's the same across the UK. So we're having to look at innovative solutions, and partly that is about recognising that our education system in here, from ourselves, from Ulster, is a really important global export that we can now take into other countries and deliver there. And that's certainly where the sector is going to see growth. All indications are that TNE, which is the broad term, transnational education, the broad term that's used for delivering in country, that's very much where the shift is occurring for the HE sector generally. Yeah,
and how will that campus and that arm of Queen's University interface with the Northern Ireland economy in terms of net benefit?
So our ambition for the Gift City campus is not simply that it is about bringing in students and delivering education. Now, that's a critical part of it, and we will start by delivering 4 to 5 master's programmes. What we want to do, though, is to deliver something stronger that also has an impact back here in Northern Ireland. So, for example, we have taken quite a significant space in Gift City. Gift City, as the Vice-Chancellor said, is a Gujarat international fintech city. It's India's first smart city, first green city. It has attracted a huge amount of business. There are now about 900 plus businesses in Gift City in the STEM, finance, IT sectors. And actually what we can do there is to create our campus as a footprint for global NI in India as well. We have space where businesses from here could be going out spending time in Gift City to engage with all of those businesses that are in Gift City and indeed beyond. We're working within Invest NI in India to see how we can present this opportunity to businesses here. We have a wonderful startup culture here and spin-out culture, which the Vice-Chancellor has mentioned. Some of those, early-stage innovation-driven enterprises could be having a soft landing in Gift City, linking in with business there, but also in the wider community. And the state of Gujarat is the biggest pharma centre in all of India. It's also massive for chemical and chemical engineering, for agri-food, mechanical and aeronautical engineering, all areas where Northern Ireland has an incredible strength. So I think, in everything that we do internationally, it isn't just about selling Queens, it is about selling global NI. So when we go out, and we've done it in Gift City, we do it wherever we go, it's about thinking about how we can create opportunities for businesses in country to link in with business here and so on. The Gift City campus gives us a physical footprint in which we can do that. As I said, we have space where we can give opportunities for businesses here to have a footprint where they can engage with business in India and develop those economic connections.
Thank you. And finally from me, and just back onto the theme about the sustainability and the joint letter, universities were quite clear that if we didn't see something change in the funding model, whether that be an aspect on student fees and elsewhere in terms of MASN and others, that ultimately it would result in a reduction in undergraduate courses. further putting strain on accessibility and participation here locally. Can I ask, if things don't change, has the university essentially modelled it out? What are we looking like in terms of reduction in undergraduate courses?
Well, I hope none, because we think it's really important that we stay a comprehensive university to meet the needs of Northern Ireland. Other universities in GB have been shutting courses. If you look at Cardiff, Aberdeen, for example, many courses have been shut down. We don't think that's the right way to go. So that would be a very last resort for us. Instead, what we've tried to do is, first of all, reduce our cost base. And we had a voluntary severance scheme recently that you might be aware of to trim our cost base. But we wanted to use that as a platform for growth. So our agenda is actually how can we grow the university's income? Because we've taken the cost back as much as we feel we can, and we think they'll be damaging if we go further, such as closing down an area which we absolutely are not thinking about. So we're looking at how we diversify the income streams, and the Gift City initiative is just one of these. So we've had a number of plans that we're working on right now that we'll be presenting to our Senate over the next 2 or 3 meetings about how we start to grow the university, because we absolutely do not want to go down the route that you've suggested, a route that others have taken. We want to stay a comprehensive university to meet the needs of Northern Ireland. And if we aren't funded by government, we have to find other ways to do it.
But you accept it's a real and possible threat if things don't change?
If the short answer is, of course, yes, but we will do absolutely everything possible to mitigate that risk. That is not a course of action that we're planning on or even thinking about, but it would be the inevitable consequence if things do not become addressed.
Okay. Could I just support what the Vice-Chancellor is saying and maybe give some statistics to this? So the Augur report that was released in terms of higher education in the UK indicates, and that's slightly dated, that it costs about £13,000 to train an undergraduate student. At the moment, we get about £4,700 from the student, and give or take between £4,000 and £4,200 from the department, and those numbers would be challenged, but that's where we're at in terms of a grant. If you take that and look at Queen's, that have just under 12,000 students, we get funding for about 7,500 students. The rest is subvented by the university, and Ulster would be in the same position. So it's just to underline to the committee the stark position that the higher education sector in Northern Ireland is in. As Serene has indicated, we are a massive economic driver. We are subventing, we are using our own spin-out resources, research income, commercial income, and we're one of the best in the UK for KPTs and everything else. But the reality is that there's a sizable amount of undergraduate subvention happening in both universities in Northern Ireland. Serena also indicated the 2 University College, who are part of our wider family. We're there to support and make sure they're sustained. They get a premium. So there's a range of things that we're doing at the moment to try and make sure that the higher education sector is sustained. But the 2 universities do a sizable amount of work to keep the lights on. And international students, as Margaret indicated, and all the commercial activity does that.
Can I just jump in there as well to add on to speaking to my colleagues, across the water in England and so on. They're seeing support services and so on cut, which just like us, their students rely on, very acutely. They're seeing their food provisions, their mental health support, all of that being cut. So not just courses being cut, but those supports that allow people to remain in university being cut. So I would imagine the English sector is going to see much higher dropout rates in the coming years, and it's the exact opposite way that you build a higher education system that can grow and that can support students. None of the rest of the English universities operate as anchor institutions for their local area. None of the rest of them engage with their local community in the same way that Queen's does. None of the rest of them supply the amount of support in the way Queen's does. I think it would be a disaster if we ended up going down the route like in England of cutting courses, cutting intakes, or cutting supports provided to students.
And can I maybe just add, in the context of your question about Gift City, where we would be developing a footprint internationally, one of the key roles of that, yes, it's about taking an education, a world-class education, to people who wouldn't have access otherwise, but what we would make there in terms of revenue would also be reinvested in here into our core activity, which is supporting student experience, supporting research, all of which then are also the drivers for economic growth. And that's critical to the Gift City campus idea.
Just check on the letter that Jonathan referenced earlier, Vice-Chancellor. Have you received an official response to that letter yet?
No, I don't think we've had a response, but not an official response.
So, written of it, so the department haven't officially responded to you. So every higher education institution in Northern Ireland have come together over a month ago to contact the Minister, and she hasn't even replied. Okay, Diana.
Thank you very much to the panel for your presentation and for the supporting documents. I really commend your commitment to economic growth in Northern Ireland, and particularly the welfare of students here. So that's really reassuring, and I do understand the constraints have been really well set out, particularly in the letter. I just wanted to take you back to, Sireen, you mentioned the triple helix working with government, industry and academia. What contribution does industry make to supporting education in the higher sector? Have you any formal arrangements there? Is that something that, with a more holistic approach, as an economic driver, that there's more coming from the advanced manufacturing sector, for example, the veterinary science sector, that can invest in the university outputs and give you more income?
Yes, and that's the whole approach with the City deal, for example, where we are inviting business and industry into these facilities to make their products and services better. So we get significant industry engagement there. We have a lot of industry contracts with, for example, with Rolls-Royce to do with research with them. That's very prevalent in engineering and to a lesser extent medicine. We are addressing skills as part of the Belfast Region City deal. The skills part isn't funded, so we're doing that ourselves. And we're trying to work with industry to make sure our graduates deliver what they need. And Margaret, did you want to come in?
Yes, well, no, please finish.
Increasingly, I think industry will play a bigger role in it in higher education going forward. We would like to see industry practitioners, if you like, coming into universities to deliver part of the teaching or courses, or develop higher level apprenticeships, working with particular businesses and industries, so that our students benefit not just from the Queen's education, but access business and industry experience, so that when they graduate, they've got that real world experience, and it makes their employability even higher. And I should say our employability is one of the highest, and the employability rate is one of the highest in the UK. Margaret, did you want to add?
Yes, I was just going to add one other area where we have a really very well structured engagement with industry is through the postgraduate awards that are funded by the Department for the Economy. These are the PhD studentships that we receive every year. They're absolutely critical, and what we have done over the last couple of years is to shift a significant portion of those to what we call CAST awards, which are collaborations for science and technology, and those are awards where industry and academics are working together on a key challenge for local, international, national industry, and the industry partner will put in a certain amount to support those projects, but out of those we're getting, I mean, it's just something that we're very, very keen to continue to grow those awards, because they are a way for us to address industry challenges, again, to drive economic growth, but also to receive in-kind and financial support from industry to drive research.
Thank you. But even going back one step to the applicant coming to Queen's or coming to any university, is there more work can be done to encourage bursaries from industry and to address that skills pipeline, that then those students, once qualified, may go back into industry in Northern Ireland?
Can I jump in on that? Yeah, I think we as a union have a lot of sort of connections with local businesses. And for me, that's one of the key drivers for how we look at the long-term sustainability of higher education, is through those connections with local business. We are providing the skills force for local business. They come to us with skills profiles that they're looking to fill, and we try our best to fill that for our next generation of workers. I think that we could, within Northern Ireland, try to build that better connection. Sometimes we still see sort of, higher level apprenticeships, degree level apprenticeships as kind of a bolt-on or experimental or kind of a new thing. For me, I think we need to embed that a lot deeper. We need to embed the connections with industry a lot deeper, and allow them to increase the number of bursaries, increase the support. If we're providing them with a skilled workforce, they should be giving back to the higher education institutes that are training their workforce, similar to how they would offer their own internal training. I also think that we in Northern Ireland have a very sort of traditional look at a degree. It's a very 3-year in-out sort of model. It's not flexible. It's not based on lifelong learning. It's not based on retraining. It's not based on reskilling. That's the angle that Queen's has done a lot of work to move us more towards. But I think as a higher education sector, and I think with working with government in a comprehensive funding review, we need to look more at that lifelong learning, that longer term learning where people are working and studying at the same time. and bringing in business and bringing in the financial support that business can provide, so that then we can provide them with the skills that they need.
Thank you. And one last question. Comparing with other universities, what is the earning potential of a graduate coming from Queen's in terms of what? I imagine it depends on the jobs available, the roles available, but what is the earning potential generally for graduates from Queen's?
It depends whether you look at the earnings potential in the context of Northern Ireland, where salaries tend to be a bit lower, so the earnings potential is lower, but the profile would be similar to any other Russell Group university in the UK. But the location creates a ceiling for some of our graduates.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
David?
You've covered, everybody's covered a lot of what I was going to ask. Just want to pick up on a couple of little things. You talked about the 5,000 students a year going to England. I completely agree. We're paying for everything until that point, and then you kind of lose them to the GB. You then said about the numbers. I'm just trying to work this in my head. So there's 5,000 numbers go across the GB. Did you say 600 coming from the south?
At the moment, we would have 1,000 students from the south.
Every year?
No, 1,000 in total.
In total,
so,
yeah.
It's increased, so our applications, Alistair's behind me, we'll write to the committee to confirm this. We would take in about 300 to 400 undergrads from the south every year, which is significant for us, saying we're taking in about 3,600, 3,000.
Yeah, no, I was working, so that's less than 10% of the total that are going to England. I was just trying to work, so if that came outside of Mason, how would that then be funded? What would be how would you see that work? If those 400 or 500 or whatever was taken out, how do you fund?
So the model that we use for GB is that the GB students pay the same fee they would pay well, an English student would say they pay the same fee as they pay in England.
Yeah.
Students coming from the south currently pay the same fee as a student from the north.
Okay.
So, and I guess we wouldn't necessarily want to disturb that, but if we left that as it was, we would be expecting support from the ROI government to fill that gap.
To what level?
Well, it would have to be a similar level to the amount that we would receive per student from the Department for Economy here in Northern Ireland. So just now we get 4,700 or thereabouts from the student, and then we get, say, 4.2 or 4.3, whatever, from the department. Yeah. And it would have to be a similar level of funding to
so you're effectively raising the Mason number by stealth, if you like. Yeah,
you're through the Vice Chancellor. You're buying extra student places. So this is the dichotomy that we face at the moment. We want more students from the south. That's a good thing for all of us.
I totally agree.
And we are now in a position, for all sorts of reasons, where we now have record numbers of young people coming south to north.
Yeah.
If you're having this debate 20 years ago, it would be the opposite. There was record numbers going north to south, but due to cost of living and other factors, that's changed. However, there is an issue in terms of disparity, as Sireen's outlined. So what we are asking for is some thinking around this that allows the Irish government, for a very small amount of money, to support the students coming from ROI to the north, that they would subvent that the same way as the department does with us. So that would be 4,000, 4,200 give or take per student. And that would allow growth. Now, we do have engagements with the Irish government where they purchase from us 25 medical places, because they have an issue around capacity within their doctoral programs for clinicians. So we have 25 places that are fully funded by the Irish government that are in our medical school that are bought outside of Mason. Okay, so our argument is that we want more students, we want more home-based students. We need to decouple the ROI situation, because the challenge to us, and it's a challenge that we need to recognise from our students and from political representatives, is that you're going GB to Northern Ireland, you're paying £9,700. You're going from Dundalk to Belfast, you're paying £4,700, and there's an indicating there's a disparity there. So that's an issue we need to address.
Yeah, no, I have a daughter in the south, and her fees are 1,000 something pounds. Like, so I suppose that's the disparity.
So the current fee in the south is €2,000. It was £3,000, but it's been reduced by about £1,000 by the minister.
Yeah, it's about £1,600. Yeah, no, well, listen, just you've covered quite a bit. What I want to pick up on the student rate and childcare. So you've just increased that or taken that away. For students, I suppose particularly PhD students, we're talking about economic growth, and is there a risk there's a barrier there, if you looked at that, to some people coming back to study?
Well, we're still subventing childcare by I think £300,000 of our own money we put into that to keep the costs as low as possible. We're offering discounts for students who are coming back, and the number of students affected is under 20.
Okay.
The important, just to pick that up, the important part of that is you know, the Students' Union and the university don't disagree with the cause of that issue, which is a fundamental lack of funding for what we see as a critical service that the university is providing outside of education and research. The university has had to make a difficult choice there. Our issue is around, you know, how savings are made, and that is our job as a critical friend of the university, is to interrogate how those decisions are made and how savings are made. But for me, it just highlights again another instance of the university being asked to provide a service outside of its normal portfolio, and then having to make a difficult decision of cutting it, and then being left, you know, sort of facing repercussions for that. For me, I'd like to see a scenario where the university can continue to provide these services, or they are provided outside of the university's scope, but they're stepping in to fill a gap that already, you know, exists.
Yeah, no bother. No 100%. I'm good.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you very much indeed. I think the committee will be very keen to follow up with the department in relation to higher education, particularly the review. But obviously the review is going to be a long-term process, and it's not going to provide the short-term answers that you need. I think it's completely unacceptable that there's still been no budget set at this stage. So I'll be in my colleagues' capable hands, and I can try.
Chair, could I just make one more point through the Vice-Chancellor, if you don't mind? Could we ask the committee, maybe going back to the Vice-Chancellor's point about the 6% levy, to write to the Minister on that in a supportive way? Because if we're going to increase or put a levy on international student fees by 6%, that will have a detrimental impact on both universities for all the reasons outlined around international students subventing the funding model that we have. So we'd appreciate the Department's support on that. And also the second issue would be on the Republic of Ireland issue.
Yes.
It would be particularly useful to the Minister, and maybe to Minister Lawless in the South, to write on that issue as well, because we do need a resolution to it. And it goes back to Sinead's point about the expansion of McGee. This could be a critical lever in terms of expanding student numbers at McGee.
Exactly. No problem at all. Thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, Peter.
So members content then, is the committee content to write to just QUB around the number of applicants from the Republic of Ireland and the number of actual students, because they said they would come back on that, and then to the department would be around urging clarity around the budget generally, and in particular around HE. Also, in terms of the higher education panel, is the committee then supportive of QUB's suggestion that should be an international, independent panel? And then additionally the points that were just made about the 6% levy on international students, and around the Government of the Republic of Ireland funding its students coming to Northern Ireland, so that they could then be removed from Mazen. Would that cover what the committee wants to do?
Yeah, and just in particular in relation to the higher education review, item 9 of the department's end of year progress report stated that the review team will be in place by June 2025. We're now in June 2025 and it's not in place, so we need to get an urgent update from the department where that's at.
Chair, the Minister had said that she is expecting to receive the terms of reference pretty soon, or draft terms, and that she would share that with the Economy Committee.
Yes.
I'm really concerned that this has really been pushed back. We're going into recess now in another couple of weeks, so I mean that you'd expect that will be coming to us in the next week or two.
Definitely.
Earliest convenience then, right?
Okay. Members content? Okay, item 7, members, is update on the pausing of the energy efficiency grant scheme, and invite forward colleagues. Pleased to welcome back to the committee Dr. Vicky Kell, who's Director of Innovation Research and Development at Invest Northern Ireland, Daniel Purdy, Energy and Resource Efficiency Manager at Invest, Katrina Duddy, who's the Head of Energy Management at the Department, and Ryan White, who's the Director of Heat Buildings and Climate Change at the Department also. Colleagues, thank you very much for coming along, really appreciate it, and for all your hard work as always, but I'll hand over to you to make a statement on the scheme and ultimately its closing and the pathway forward.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to you about the Energy and Resource Efficiency Programme. In particular, we are here to discuss the pause of the Energy Efficiency Capital Grant to new applicants, whilst we take time to review the first year of its operation. My name is Ryan White. I'm Director of Heat Buildings and Climate Change from Energy Group in the department, and with me today, as you've articulated, are Katrina Duddy from the Energy Management Team, and Invest and I colleagues Dr. Vicky, Kell and Daniel Purdy, who manage the delivery of the programme on behalf of the department. I would start by giving a brief background to the development of the programme, setting this in the context of the strategic policy and legislative landscape, and then I'll hand over to Invest and I colleagues to make some open remarks relating to operational delivery so far, and then welcome questions from members. The introduction of the new Energy Efficiency Support Scheme for businesses was a commitment of the Executive's energy strategy. It was published at the end of 2021. This strategy was closely followed by the introduction of climate change legislation for the region, which has served to further reinforce the need for policy interventions of this kind, and this is set in the context of supporting the delivery of a just energy transition for businesses. During the scheme development process, we took a policy decision that rather than to focus solely on energy efficiency, the wider Energy and Resource Efficiency Programme, including the introduction of a new capital grant for energy efficiency, would be brought together into one business case and one set of approvals to ensure efficiency in programme delivery. The wider programme offers several complementary measures that meant that this approach is a really good strategic fit. The wider programme offerings for businesses allow them to avail of technical support for energy audits and sustainability reports as precursors to energy and resource efficiency capital grants. The Department and Invest and I have worked in a collaborative and integrated manner throughout the development of the programme, and this work was taken forward against the backdrop of the independent review of Invest and I. And energy and broader green economy aspects of policy delivery have been regularly held up as an exemplar in that response to the review, with the Department of Invest and I working in partnership and taking an evidence-based approach to all policy decisions. During the development process, an extensive gap analysis and benchmarking exercise was carried out, alongside the review of operational delivery from Invest and I schemes that operated between 2020 and 2022. The resultant programme is operating under the regulatory framework of both state aid and subsidy control, whilst also delivering support to both Invest and I client organisations and to the wider business space. The programme has been a good example of operational delivery in a constrained environment and has had a huge level of interest from businesses. I'll now hand over to my colleague Vicky to give you an overview of the operational delivery and the next steps in relation to the programme.
Dr. Kell, thank you.
Morning. Morning, Chair, members of the committee, and thank you from me also to be provided with the opportunity to give an update on the Energy Efficiency Capital Grant, and I will refer to that as EECG as we go forward. As Rand said, I'll provide you with an overview of the Energy and Resource Efficiency Programme as well as further detail on the EECG, and then we'll be happy to take questions from committee members. The Energy and Resource Efficiency Programme is a key contributor to the Invest in I business strategy. It supports business under the strategic priority of decarbonisation and sustainability. The current Invest in I business strategy sets out a strategic objective to support 575 investments in net zero, energy and resource efficiency technologies. The Energy and Resource Efficiency Programme plays a vital role in terms of delivering that objective. The EECG forms one element of the support provided under the Energy and Resource Efficiency Programme. It's delivered by the Energy and Resource Efficiency team within Invest, and Daniel heads up that team. The overall programme was approved by the Department for Finance in February 2024 and represents 38.34 million of support over a 5-year period. As Ryan said, the programme includes technical advice, sustainability planning and support for capital investments which enable businesses to achieve cost, carbon, material and energy savings. And it should be noted that the wider Energy and Resource Efficiency Programme continues to operate as normal. However, due to the exceptional demand for the EECG element, this is currently paused for new applications. The EECG was a new scheme offering support to Northern Ireland businesses in their efforts to decarbonise. It supports the policy objectives of net zero and contributes to the Northern Ireland energy strategy to deliver energy savings of 25% from buildings and industry by 2030. The grant supports all businesses to install energy efficiency measures along with low carbon and renewable technologies, thereby helping businesses to take control of their energy use, lower their energy demand and costs, and reduce their energy emissions. The EECG is open to businesses that meet eligibility criteria, including companies from the wider business base that are new to Invest in I support. Grants of up to 150,000 are available, and the rate of support is based upon company size. So it's 30% for large companies, 40% for medium-sized companies, and 50% for micro and small companies. When applying for EECG, it's a two-step process. The business first undergoes a business eligibility check, and we ensure that the business is eligible. And then we look at the project to ensure that the project which they are bringing forward is also eligible, and we have all the information we need. As custodians of public funds, we must administer the funds wisely and undertake due diligence and checks accordingly. The scheme opened to inquiries in April 2024, and it has proven to be very popular, with interest well exceeding our initial expectations. To date, the team have received over 1,400 inquiries, and they have processed over 98% of these. At the time of the pause, 1,000 inquiries had progressed to either business eligibility or project eligibility. The remaining did not progress because either they weren't eligible for the scheme, could have been domestic house users, or the applicant had decided to withdraw their expression of interest as they were not in the position to bring forward a project at that particular time. Reporting statistics are still subject to end-of-year validation and publication. However, the scheme indicates a high level of uptake from SMEs, and the demand within the business community for energy and efficiency support is high. Micro and small businesses make up over 75% of the inquiries received, and overall 70% of inquiries came from that wider business base that are not Invest in I clients. The grant supports a wide range of energy efficiency technologies such as lighting, heating, cooling equipment, motors and drives. However, the majority of interest relates to solar PV, and that accounts for over 90% of the inquiries received. The scheme has been operational for 1 year, and the team have processed offers to the value of £5.5 million. These offers have directly contributed to the Invest in I's regional balance target as outlined by the Minister in the sub-regional strategy, and around 75% of the offers have been made to businesses outside the Belfast metropolitan area. In addition, micro and small businesses account for over 55% of the offers made. A review of the EECG formed part of the Energy and Resource Efficiency Programme business case, and that review was stated to be triggered at £5 million in committed expenditure or 12 months of operation, and that review is currently underway. You'll note from the written submission that the decision to pause the EECG was proactive, ensuring budget integrity and to prevent over-commitment. The scheme is closely monitored, and monthly governance meetings are held between Invest in I and the Department for the Economy. Based on the scheme progress and budgeting modelling, the trajectory of demand from business indicates a budget requirement in excess of the approved amount of capital expenditure for the scheme. For this reason, a pause was implemented on the 9th of May, with a grace period for those businesses at the final stage of application so that they could submit their application by the 16th of May. We understand that businesses at the early stages of the process were disappointed to learn of the pause. However, the action was necessary to prevent overcommitment of budget. While the scheme is in pause, we will continue to assess submitted project applications and undertake a review to ensure that applications received to date do not exceed the funding allocated, and to ensure that it is delivering against the Department for the Economy's vision of a greener, more prosperous economy. The outcome of the review will guide the next steps relating to EECG, and this will be communicated to all the businesses who are affected by the pause. So thank you for listening, and we welcome any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kell, and thank you for engaging with me during the process. Just firstly, the department. Why are Invest in I doing this scheme and not the department?
The delivery of this scheme is underpinned by the 1999 Energy Efficiency Order, which enables Invest in I to provide financial assistance for energy efficiency.
Okay.
It's the most appropriate legal pathway to do this.
And the department wouldn't have been able to do it directly?
The department would have had to, I suppose, procure a service provider in that process, and I guess our ability to deliver through Invest in I, who have a proven track record in this space and have delivered energy efficiency support as far back as 2008, was deemed the most appropriate option.
Sure. And do you believe this is a core function of Invest in I's work?
Economic development and the journey towards, I suppose, a greener and more prosperous economy are underpinned by the Minister's priorities. But also what we can see in the economy and I suppose broader global economics is that over 130 countries have now committed to a net zero journey. That makes up over 90% of global GDP. That is our export market, and we truly believe that net zero is a fundamental and core element of the economy going forward. It is also a core element of Invest in I's business strategy as well.
Okay. So what impact has this scheme had on economic development here in Northern Ireland?
I suppose there's three main things that energy efficiency will drive in businesses. The first one would be driving down bills. The second one would be improving energy security. And the third one would then be activity in the sector. So we've seen a really large uptake in areas like solar, which has driven, I suppose, companies in that space to scale. This is about impact, this is about scale, and I suppose that's what grant support is targeting here, growth in that area.
Sure. And have you been able to put a figure on the economic impact of the scheme to date?
No, I suppose some of the value that we will see through the review process will help us understand that a little bit better. The original business case had outlined figures for GVA, etc., like that were around this programme. I can't remember the figures offhand. I think it was approaching $500 million by 2030, so that's over the 5 years of the programme. But there were elements of that had...
The budget of how much each year for the programme?
Pardon?
With a budget of how much each year for the programme?
So the wider programme budget is 38 million.
Yeah.
And over 4 years, there was various modelling scenarios taken forward.
Okay.
So that will be profiled in various ways over the 4 years or 5 years.
In terms of the offers, so offers of $5.5 million have been made. How much has been accepted?
Those offers have all been accepted. We have drawdown of approximately 17 projects, 400 and something thousand pounds. But all of those offers have been accepted. It's a year from the letter of offer for the company to complete the project and then get the claim in. So, so a lot of those offers only went out probably towards the end of the summer. So there's several months left to draw down.
Towards the end of
last summer, sorry.
Okay.
You know, so once we launched it in May, it took sort of several months to get offers out.
Yes. So £5.5 million of offers currently out, and then how many got through the final process before the pause?
We at the end of the pause, so that 115 projects that got through, that was year end figures for 24-25. So we're sitting sort of, let's see, I think we have another 172 still submitted project, which will be turned into offers.
Okay, with a total value of how much?
We are estimating about £8 million, but this is based on average figures, you know, until we actually verify the actual projects and see the valid eligible costs. We
bring in the total up to £8.5 million, or 8.5 plus the 5.5?
8.5 plus the 5.5.
Okay. And the budget for this scheme was?
The capital budget is 16.9.
Okay. In terms of the average offer made to businesses, what would that have been?
The average grant size was £46,000, and the average project size was £120,000.
And then finally, just for me, in terms of the impact of this scheme, so one of the main impacts was to reduce energy bills of those recipients by 25%. Have we any indications of the decisions made of how that has helped or not?
So as part of the validation project of the projects themselves, we are looking at numbers. It's a simple sum. Is it eligible? Does it achieve the targets? Anything that has got through has achieved the targets. When we have sort of quantified all of the costs, all of the energy, and then the potential savings, it's potentially 14 million kilowatt hours, which translate to about 30% saving in terms of cost and about 40% saving in terms of energy and carbon.
Thank you very much, Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for your presentation so far. It's fair to say there was a lot of excitement and lobbying for a scheme like this to come into it. Like I've talked to many businesses that were calling for this very scheme, so that they can modernise their energy practices within their own respective businesses. And on the face of things, you've presented a very orderly pause, but surely, was there a brave degree of naivety as to just how popular this scheme would be? Like, to close it just over a year after its inception seems to me like...
The first thing I would say, it's not closed, it's paused. And we are still processing applications at the project application stage. So it's not as though we're not putting out offers. We're still issuing letters of offer after we've validated the project. In terms of the profiling that was done in relation to the business case, there's no other scheme exactly like this. So what we were able to do was take a look at some of the other schemes that had been in existence in terms of, say, the COVID type schemes that were in operation, also schemes in other jurisdictions. To be honest, if you look at some of the budgets they have, obviously it's a lot more significant than ours. This was a scheme new to Northern Ireland, new in terms of setup, and that's why the review after a year was something that we built into the business case so that we could see how it was actually playing out. We could see the uptake, we could see the level of demand for it, and that would allow us to determine whether or not we needed to make any changes to the scheme.
So what forecasting was done in preparation for the scheme? What you received 1,400 inquiries. What forecasting models did it show in terms of what you anticipated?
That was far in excess of the demand that was anticipated based on the modelling that was done. As I say, there was no other exact copy that we could take to look at an existing scheme to say what's the profile that's going to come from it. So what was done was there was an analysis done, gap analysis done in terms of what was needed, and then there was an investigation and analysis done of other similar schemes, but nothing exactly as we have.
And what did your modelling suggest?
The modelling suggests, we are effectively looking at 5 times the demand that we thought we would.
Wow.
And if I could come in on that, we benchmarked against schemes that are run in the south by SEAI, by Scottish Enterprise. We looked across, I suppose, that the landscape of support out there. We surveyed businesses, we interviewed businesses, we held workshops with businesses. And there was an extensive piece of work done by economists and energy specialists in this space to present that sort of background information for the casework.
What was the breakdown of applications between large, medium and small micro businesses?
When the inquiries come in, obviously some of them may be eligible, some of them may not be eligible, so we sort of look at that from the perspective of until they're across the line, that information is a bit furry. But in terms then of the offers we have made, micro and small businesses accounted for 56% of the offers, medium were 37% and large were only 8%.
Okay.
One thing sort of when we were doing the modelling exercise, which is something that we really wanted to do, was bring in the wider business space. Traditionally Invest and I don't have a lot of interaction with the wider business space on various schemes, so that in a way could have been an unknown. We were quite sort of surprised at the scale, the amount, the number, and even the size of the projects the wider business space were bringing forward to us.
So would you have an average figure for what a project would cost in each of those 3 categories?
Ooh. I could work it out, but...
I just would be interested to see, because for me, I seen the real purpose of this scheme is really helping with our micro and small businesses who didn't have the wherewithal to revolutionise in terms of some of the energy efficiencies, like from lighting, for example, very basic, right up. And I was just wondering what the difference was. Could for example, that 8% of large businesses, in a sense, swallow up a much larger section of the pooling of funding compared to...
I think the important thing to remember is we capped the projects at 150k.
Yeah.
For any application, a business can also put in 3 projects within that one application. So they could do relatively small projects, but they're combined together, so it reduces the processing for the business and the amount of admin they have to do.
And did you see that happening quite extensively?
We did have applications that did have multiple strands in terms of the project.
In terms of the actual cost per project, I can't give that, but I can give a breakdown in terms of micro and small accounted for 2 million of the 5.5 million. Medium 2.8, and large was only £550,000. So, that's what I was saying. That actually the small companies were doing quite significant sized projects.
Okay, and finally from me, obviously 1,400 inquiries. Obviously stage 1 is an assessment from Invest NI. That's quite a bit of engagement. Did that put significant pressure on the organisation to actually get round all of these businesses to evaluate?
We had staffing requirements in relation to running the scheme. We had 2 recruitment exercises, but the skill set is quite hard to actually secure. So we still have a couple of vacancies in the technical area for this particular scheme. But what I would say is that what takes time is the back and forward communication with the business, because they may provide information, but there's then gaps. So then you have to go back to try and get the gaps. They could wait 2 months before they come back to give you that information. So it's the back and forward to get all the information you need to make the evaluation is where the time consumption happens.
Okay, and is it fair to say that it's not lost work? So for example, we're at pause, 1,400 inquiries. Of those 1,400, how many were assessed by Invest NI, for example?
So in terms of the 1,400, 1,000 were taken through to the first eligibility stage.
Yes.
The others were either because they weren't eligible, because they were domestic users, or the business decided not to progress.
So of those 1,000, for example, yes, there are some that have went on and have been awarded and will be awarded, but of those that aren't going to be, whenever the project or if hopefully it's unpaused, is that lost work? Do we have to start again with those businesses, or do they continue on?
No, we simply, the inquiry is registered through our portal, so it's automatically on our system. We then have that list of all 1,400 inquirers. If then, after we do the assessment, so that's a chat with one of the technical advisors, does this project sound viable? Does your business sound viable? If so, you go to the next stage. Once they go to the next stage, an application is issued to the company, and it's via our portal, so the company have access day and night to achieve it. It's all on a system and it's always tracked. So despite the pause at the moment, it's just froze at that stage. Once it's unpaused, it opens again and starts exactly where it is. You just resume from where you are. Nothing will be lost.
Quick answer, because we're pushed for time. Do you have an anticipated date for unpausing?
We need to do the evaluation and review of the programme, and then we need to see what we need in terms of additional funding, and then go through that process. So until we actually go through the review, I'm hesitant to say a time frame.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
In terms of the economists, we're pushing to get it done as quickly as possible. So we would hope that we would have some sort of output within the next 3-4 months.
Okay. So you're thinking you'll have the review done by September, and then you'll look at a new budget, which will not obviously be able to be set then until the next financial year?
Well, there will still be some funds left that will allow us to progress, but in terms of actually going beyond the budget that has been allocated, we would need to look for additional funds.
Problem, David?
I agree and totally support the principles of what you're trying to achieve in businesses. Can I just ask you, the Invest to Save programme that's out for public buildings, is it linked in any way to this?
No, it's not linked at all.
So there's a separate department with a separate set of officials doing exactly the same piece of work?
No, so the Invest to Save fund is focused at the public sector.
Yeah.
This fund is focused at supporting businesses.
Focused at doing exactly the same thing is what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's also stopped?
It stopped due to a lack of budget allocation.
Yeah.
Rather than any sort of approvals or any sort of difficulty with the pipeline of projects.
I'm dealing with a school in my area that is now left with way higher costs because halfway through they're now got half of the job done and not the rest of the job done. So they've got the air source heat pumps, but not the insulation. So the heat that they're now generating is just literally gone out the walls and windows. Are we at risk of businesses because you've paused are exactly the same boat if it was in 3 stages? You said it was up to 3 stages.
The business wouldn't have started the implementation until they got the letter of offer from ourselves, and they wouldn't have got the letter of offer until after the project eligibility assessment was completed of the application. So therefore, only those businesses that got the letter of offer were secured the funding, and then they would start the project. So there's no one is halfway through the process.
They're not. It wasn't paused in the middle of it. So if you said they could do in 3 stages, so there's no point. There's no pause in between those stages.
A business, in terms of the stages, that was for the overall approval.
Yeah.
But until the business had gone through all of the approval processes, they wouldn't have got the letter of offer, and therefore they couldn't have started the work. So there's no way that they're paused in the middle.
Okay.
They've secured the funds, they've secured the support to allow them to deliver on the project that they applied for.
Okay. You said a minute ago about the budget coming through, so this is budget related as well. It's follow the money. You know, if this is a principle that, as an executive, we want to deliver and the money isn't there, then really it's words rather than actual action. Is there an issue with budget?
There's 2 separate matters here. On the public sector, that is funding related. On this side, this is about business case, financial process, and there is an appetite to scale this. However, we are running close to our current level of approvals in the business case process.
Yeah, so you can't scale it?
We can go through an amendment of the business case or a new business case.
Okay. And then we're talking about what you say, September time, then we'll see that coming through? Yeah. Perfect.
And is that the same time you're hoping to do the Net Zero Accelerator Fund?
No, that is in a longer timeline, I believe. There's a market engagement process going on at the moment, and it's the end of 2026, I believe, is the timeline for the Net Zero Accelerator Fund.
And the business case is being done by Invest Northern Ireland for that?
The business case was initially drafted by the Strategic Investment Board.
Yeah, but it's out of date now, right?
Well, the delivery of the scheme has sort of been handed over to Invest now for ownership.
Sure. I was just reading your document, so significant delay as an initial outline business case was outdated. Invest NI have now appointed special resource to carry out a market needs analysis and updated business case. So there is no business case done yet.
Well, there was a business case.
But it's out of date, so you're having to update it. Okay. Sinead?
Most of the questions have been answered, but in relation to those offers that have been made, Vicky, you said that the scheme was open to non-Invest NI clients. Can you give me a proportion of those offers that have been made? How many of them would be Invest NI clients vis-a-vis not?
In terms of the inquiry, 70% were wider business base, so only 30% were Invest NI clients.
In terms of offers?
In terms of offers, Daniel?
It's wider business base 37% and client companies 63%.
Right.
Now, the reason of that flip is because there's 2 steps. Invest NI clients go through an ongoing monitoring in terms of their finances. If a new business engages with us, we have to carry that monitoring. That's an extra step that client companies sort of nearly bypass. So they're playing catch up to an extent, but we would find that, you know, it's now coming back in line with the 70-30.
Right.
Itself.
And so in relation to the scheme itself, what are you doing to support those that have that extra step to do that are not in the system, as you would say already?
Since we launched the scheme, we have now 2 people in that area that are experienced client executives from within Invest NI, and they're doing that financial analysis, checking the business eligibility. They're working with the companies. We've streamlined a lot of the process, you know, in terms of application form, with know your customer checks, and these are all standard, you know, checks within Invest NI for all schemes. And we're trying to bring those companies through. You know, there's a lot of hand holding, to be honest, you know, with the scheme, should it be technical or business aspects. So we're bringing those through, and we have sort of improved that, and that's why I was saying we feel we will get back to the 70-30 split towards a wider business base.
I mean, in terms of that additional resource, as Daniel says, there are 2 people helping companies with that initial step in terms of that business eligibility assessment.
Okay, it's just really important that there's an equity in the system, you know, that it's
Absolutely.
not just Invest NI clients that actually can jump the hoops. So, and then the other point is, so we're looking obviously at the review and the evaluation, and we've asked about the timescales, but based on what you've now learnt in this first iteration, how is the department planning to improve future demand forecasting to avoid a pause in the scheme coming forward? What plans have you got in place now that you know the scale of the demand?
Yeah, I guess like the review, the reason we built in 5.5 million or 12 months is because we wanted enough data to try and understand this at that sort of depth. Like the previous schemes that this was modelled on operated during COVID, and they were client companies only. So we need to understand this profile now that we have. We need to understand, I suppose, what a sustainable budget, what a sustainable grant level, what a sustainable sort of long-term initiative looks like, so that we don't have to pause this again in the future.
Okay,
Thank you, Sinead. Colleagues, thank you very much for making yourselves available, and thank you for all the important work that you continue to do. But the committee would be keen, once the review's done in September, just to be kept up to date of any changes that may or may not be made.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Peter.
So members content to then to write to the department just regarding the economic impact information that the chairperson asked about, the average cost per micro, medium and large company, the timeline for the review and for the anticipated unpausing, to be kept up to date, as the chairperson just said. Committee are content?
Content, yeah.
Okay, members, just moving to item 8 then, industrial training levy, SL1, refer to the clerk's cover note at page 113. The department intends to lay a statutory bill entitled the Industrial Training Levy Construction Industry Order Northern Ireland 2025. The rule will be subject to negative resolution procedure and will likely come into the operation on 31st of August 25. The rule enables the Construction Industry Training Board in Northern Ireland to raise funding through a levy on employers in the industry. The board is to encourage the adequate training to those employed or intending to be employed in the construction industry in Northern Ireland. It's funded through a levy which is determined by a percentage, 0.5% of the payroll costs of employers in the industry. Employers with earnings less than 80,000 are exempt. The levy is to be imposed for the period the 1st of September 25 and ending on the 31st of August 26 and is unchanged from previous years. Members, are they content for the department to make the proposed rule?
Can I just declare
Declared interest, yeah. No, you had that before when it came last year, so no, 100%. Members content?
Agreed, members.
Okay, correspondence then, members. Item 2, members are asked to note a copy of the 25-26 departmental business plans. The correspondence includes a link to the year-end update, which indicates that in this quarter the department will publish the following: a careers action plan, a skills action plan, an apprenticeship action plan and a cross-border skills initiative, a circular economy policy, a grid connection policy, a good jobs charter consultation, an Irish language policy and an RHI closure bill. The department is also to appoint a further education review team, award the project gigabit tender and publish the final design for a renewable electricity support scheme. In September it is to develop an MOU with counterparts in the Republic of Ireland in respect of all island economic, social and environmental cooperation. So members, I would encourage you to have a look at the business plan that's been published. I may be a sceptic that I can't see all these things being delivered as outlined. I do think at some stage, Peter, it would be useful for the committee to be briefed on the end of year progress. The department has given itself or green statuses for things that haven't progressed, so I'm just be keen to understand the gridding system and how you can award yourself a green RAG rating on an aviation policy that hasn't even started.
So is that agreed, members?
Great.
Okay. Item.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
Sorry, I just want everybody to note regarding the state aid rules of CODA, because there was questions raised regarding that, and it was a pretty positive response that we received.
I think we're coming to that.
We'll come to that shortly.
Correspondence on
Oh,
that.
right, sorry,
we'll
it's
come to
up
that.
above, and their
Yeah.
CODA complies with state aid rules as well in number 1.
Yes.
Or number 5, sorry.
Yeah. So item 3, members are asked to note a departmental response confirming that 4 English enhanced investment zones are making use of tax exemptions. These are understood to include some of the following: stamp duty, land, building and equipment capital allowances, etc. Is the committee content to note at this stage? Okay. Item 4 is members are asked to note a further departmental response in respect of the department's disclaimed accounts. Members content to note? Yep. Item 5 then is in relation to the state aid rules on quota. Sinead?
Yeah, no, I'm just saying it was a pretty positive response
Yes.
in relation to the Competition and Marketing Authority. So I think we could put that
I
to
would
rest.
just raise one point. So on page 11 of the report, paragraph 234, the report states that the assessment could have explicitly considered whether the subsidy could impact investment decisions in other airports in Northern Ireland, and if so, if there was appropriate mitigations in the subsidy design. But apart from that, as you say, Sinead, it has been highlighted. The rules in terms of state aid is not for the department. They've said they've handed the money to Derry City and Strabane City Council, and it's for them to ensure that they comply with it rather than the department. Anybody else want to raise anything on that one? No? Okay, we'll then move to item 6. Members are asked to note a response from the Committee for Infrastructure accepting an invitation to a joint concurrent meeting. Is the committee content to write to the CFI and explain owing to scheduling clashes the evidence won't take place as part of the joint concurrent meeting and will still be heard on the 2nd of July?
Yeah.
Great.
With omissions.
Yep. Item 7, members are asked to consider a call for evidence from the Assembly Executive Review Committee in respect of committee engagement on taking evidence on cross-cutting matters. Any member wish to raise anything on this? We just note.
Members, are you content for me to, I'll draft something and come back, and this is all about joint concurrent meetings and how we do them, and maybe we could do them better and all that good stuff. So, okay, I will do that.
Item 8, members are asked to note an invitation to, okay, that's already happened, so members content to note item 8. Item 9, members are asked to consider correspondence from the Committee for Finance in respect of Unite the Unions campaign. Members content to write to the department seeking its views.
Great.
Thank you. Item 10, members are asked to consider a motion agreed by the Committee for Education in respect of the 14 to 19 provision and post-19 SEN. Do you think, Peter, this would be debated before recess? Or?
It just might be. So it's at page 181. So the Committee for Education have agreed this motion, and what they're trying to do is the thing that we did before is have it jointly agreed by both committees. So yes, I would anticipate it might be the very last day, the last on the.
Do members want to take some time to discuss with their parties, or are they content at this stage to approve? I just don't want to push members into a decision if they hadn't had a chance to speak with their colleagues.
I'm happy enough.
I imagine all our colleagues on the other committee have already agreed it for us.
So members content to agree then?
Yeah, I would imagine.
Okay, that's agreed then. Item 11, members are asked to note a copy of the ESR report. Members content? Yep, okay. Item 12, again for noting, members from the House of Lords Scrutiny Committee content? Again, yeah, item 13, again for noting from the House of Lords Scrutiny Committee. Members content? Yeah. Members are asked to consider a request to brief the chairperson from SSE PLC. Are members content that I do that?
Yeah.
Thank you. Item 15, members are asked to note a copy of the Royal Irish Academy Policy Report. Members content to note?
Yeah.
Thank you. Item 16, members are asked to note a copy of correspondence from a concerned individual. Members content to note?
Content.
Item 17, members are again asked to note multiple correspondence in respect of the theatre in Coleraine. Members content to note?
Content.
No problem at all. Board work plan, Peter.
Members, just to seek the committee's agreement, if you look at the forward work programme, that on the 2nd of July we would have the National Franchise Dealers Association talk about EU regulations of vehicle emissions, and also the QUB unions had asked us to come and brief on similar to what we've heard today. So if you're content with that, the other bit is the Insolvency Amendment Bill. So if you recall, the department has briefed us about this. There was a consultation. The bill itself is 121 clauses long, longest bill I've ever dealt with, and 4 schedules. What it's doing is it's a lot of stuff around insolvency and director disqualification. My understanding is it's what is currently happening in England and Wales and is being rolled out to Northern Ireland, and hasn't happened for various reasons over the last few years because the Assembly was down, etc. So that's what they're going to do. That bill is likely to be introduced on the 23rd of June. So the idea, we get a briefing from the department about it, just to remind you, next week. The timeline I would suggest to you would be expected to be introduced on the 23rd of June. I expect the second stage to be on the 1st of July. So you get your briefing next week. That cues you up with what you might want to say during second stage. I presume it's going to pass. If it's not, or if you have any worries, do let me know. But if it doesn't, if it does pass, then what I would suggest is the committee puts down a motion to extend the committee stage at our meeting on the 2nd of July. It's not that I believe the bill is controversial or anything like that. It's just it's very, very long. And what we need to do is do a call for evidence over the summer, and stakeholders really don't like that. So we would have to run it July, August, September. So that means we then start taking evidence, if there is any, in October, by which stage the committee stage would have run out. So we will extend it to Christmas, is my suggestion. But I would, with members' cooperation, endeavour to get that done and well done before Halloween. But just in case there is something unexpected that
Better
comes
banking in the time.
Aye, exactly. That's what I think. So that would be the suggestion, is that we put down, if the committee is agreeable, on the 2nd of July, after the bill is passed second stage, the chair will hopefully sign a motion to extend to Christmas. That would then go to plenary in September. We do our call for evidence over the summer in September. We would then take evidence in October. Doing the clause by clause is going to be a wee bit hellish, because it's 121 clauses plus 4 schedules, and we'll have to go through each one of them. But that will take us a week or two just to do that. But if you extend to the Christmas, that will be grand. There's plenty of time. And if any other very interesting policy things come along, I mean, the department is promising quite a lot before the end of June. I anticipate those will materialise actually in the autumn, so that'll give us time to do other interesting things and still finish the bill nice and early, which I know the department is keen to do. So if members are generally content with that approach, we'll have our briefing on the bill next week, and I will then bring a motion to you on the 2nd of July seeking an extension to the committee stage. Hopefully you find that uncontroversial. If you find it controversial, good time to say, or if not, you can tackle me about it afterwards, and I can say that all again, only in English and slower. So if that's required.
Everyone content, okay?
Yeah. Could I ask, have any progress been made on a workshop on renewables?
Right, we'll get a overview on renewables next week. Yeah, so that's just research going to talk to us.
That's good.
I'd been chatting to Renewables Northern Ireland, so Stephen Agnew, about doing a visit. We're also going to go to the utility regulator in later in September. Is it like the 25th of September? Let me just see. When is it? It's the 1st of October. We're going to the utility regulator, who's going to, and I've said to them, members want to talk about renewables. So like I said, I was also talking to Renewable NI about a nice visit. I note in the business plan there's a reference to a community renewable energy project at Derry Lynn. Okay, who knew? Right, I didn't either. So there might be a visit in there at some point. So yes, I'm alive to that.
Thank you.
Which hopefully that will satisfy. So, Chairperson.
Oh, I know.
Okay,
that.
anything else, members, any other business? David?
Sir.
Can I raise a couple of things? Yeah, just two things. We had the BMA in a roundtable last week, and it came up in the discussion about the student loans company and the differential between Northern Ireland students and GB students who study here, or vice versa. And it'd be interesting, could we ask for them student loans company to come in to kind of answer this? There's a differential between what our students can get from the student loans company or access to than what an English Scottish or Wales student can.
Okay, we had a student loan company in before. I thought we'd...
That's right to them in the first instance.
Okay,
If you're
we'll do
content
that.
with it.
Yeah, okay.
right too.
And then the second thing to raise then, there was just for an update on the sectoral action plan. There was an action plan about a year ago, and it's just to see where the sectoral action plan.
Sectoral action plan.
Sectoral action plans. Yes, we had those that were all issued to us.
And where are they now? It's just an update on that.
Okay, update
Yeah,
the
it's
sectoral
just
action
an
plan. Is
update.
that agreed, Chairperson?
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
Anything else? No? Okay, well then we will adjourn